Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and a happy Tuesday to you. I want to thank Jasper Kalin for posting a link to this appellate decision. But a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision has come down in Miller versus Salvaggio. That would be Diddlin Jack, the I don't care if you diddle dogs or diddle kids. I'm currently being prosecuted for, I think, CP and CSA. You know, he doesn't care if you diddle kids, kind of Diddlin Jack. I could be wrong about what he's being. It's something to do with children, and it's of a sexual nature. I forget exactly. Believe it or not, I don't live and breathe by these numpties on the internet. Anywho, he sued Joe Salvaggio. Yes, the Leon Valley Joe Salvaggio, who has since been fired, etc., etc., etc. Let's go back in time. There is a provision in the Texas Penal Code that basically says government buildings, with some exceptions, you can't restrict people from carrying handguns into them. One of the restrictions is if it's a courthouse. And because of the way Texas is structured, a lot of the city buildings, like it's not just City Hall, but like in places like Leon Valley, it's the municipal court, it's the the police department, it's the city manager's office, it's the city hall, it's everything rolled up into one. So he thought that he should be able to carry a firearm into the building, and I guess he did it in some other spots. He thought that the Texas Attorney General's opinions, which are persuasive but not necessarily something that the court has to follow, he thought those indicated that he would be just fine by carrying a firearm into these various buildings. So he visited Leon Valley, who had a court, their municipal building had a courthouse on the second floor. And to get in, you had to pass a sign saying that Texas Penal Code, 46.03 or something like that was in effect. No weapons, no firearms. And there's also something like Texas Penal Code 30.60 and 30.70 or 30.06 and 30.07. I don't remember. I don't practice law in Texas. But it's something about, licensed handgun, concealed carry, people carrying open or concealed and trespassing in places where that behavior is not allowed. So Leon Valley says he can't come in with a weapon. So Jack, being the bright boy that he is, decides to get allegedly, he decides to get a rubber training pistol that's blue and paint it black, so that it looks like a real Glock. Puts it in a holster on his hip and tries to go into the Leon Valley Municipal Building. Now, of course, Leon Valley was like, no. And so he goes and puts it in his car, then goes back in. He files his complaint about the sign or whatever. And then later that night, in a late night raid, Joe Salvaggio and some other Texas, maybe other people from places outside of Leon Valley, other sheriffs and police personnel, raid Jack's home. Funnily, at that time, and I noted it at the time, but during that raid, Jack's being his typical mouthy self, and Salvaggio mentioned something about it, the 13-year-old that allegedly Jack was improper with. And I could have slight variations on those details. I'm not exactly sure entirely. It's been a long time since I've watched it, and again, I don't live and breathe this stuff, but that's the general gist of it. So the charge was eventually dropped for they found several firearms, none of which matched the description of a black Glock. They did take his digital devices, cameras, and computers and things like that, which caused a lot of consternation at the time. But like if he's recording himself doing this stuff, they knew Jack would be recording himself doing this stuff. I could see that why they would want to get his digital stuff, just in case he was planning something, he was coordinating something with other people. If he had recorded himself doing this particular crime, that would be evidence of the crime. People were also really upset that they took all the weapons, not just things that looked like a black Glock, but they didn't know. They didn't know. They knew he had a weapon. They knew he had a weapon when he walked into the building, or they believed he had a weapon when they walked into the building, but they didn't know if he had other weapons on him because he never went through the metal detector, right? Anyway, but the charges were eventually dropped. Lack of evidence. They couldn't find anything that looked like the black Glock to nail him with. So, they decided without the weapon, they couldn't prove that he actually brought a weapon in. That makes it a little bit hard, or harder. So then he decides to sue. He decides to sue them for a couple things. Number one, I believe he decided to sue them over the sign. He believed that it was that they were violating his rights or whatever by putting that sign up, saying he couldn't bring the firearms in there. But he also sued him for a Fourth Amendment violation and a First Amendment violation. The Fourth Amendment violation would be unreasonable search and seizure because they searched his house and they took his stuff. And he thought that it wasn't supported by probable cause, or that they lied on the affidavit, or that people who didn't have firsthand knowledge filled out the affidavit, or the people who filled out the affidavit had an animus against him, etc., etc. Oh, they hadn't actually frisked him and actually taken the weapon from him to determine whether or not it was an actual firearm or a rubber training dummy, and various issues that he thought were devastating to the affidavit. And if the affidavit falls, that means that the search was without a warrant, and so it lacked probable cause, blah blah blah, right? The other thing was that he was saying that he was basically being singled out. He was looking for a Neves versus Bartlett objection or exception, where, if cops see you doing something illegal, whether they hate you or not, you look at objectively like, well, did you do something that gave them reasonable suspicion, probable cause, whatever. If you want to make an argument that you're being unfairly targeted, you basically have to plead that argument, and that's a tough thing to do. And he thought he pled it, but he didn't. So anyway, he lost on summary judgment. He filed for summary judgment, and also the defendants filed for summary judgment. The district court granted the defendant's motion for summary judgment and denied the plaintiff's motion for summary judgment, dismissing the case. And the reason why is because the district court said, look, on the video, it's not clear whether or not the gun is real or fake, but it is clear that it looks like it was a gun. So the cops had probable cause to think you had a gun in there, bro. Like, it looked like a gun. There's no reason for them to not think you didn't have a gun. It looked like you had a gun. It was in a holster. It looked like a gun. Well, anyway, Jack appealed, and he lost. And why did he lose? Because it looked like a gun. And here's the lesson that I want everybody to take away from this. And because it looked like a gun, that gave them probable cause. All the other issues that he raised were, pretty easily handled. They don't have to have firsthand knowledge. They can have secondhand knowledge of information, blah, 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 as long as it's likely to be true or whatever. But and the Neves exception, they didn't have a Neves exception. But at the end of the day, if you go out of your way to make it look like you're committing a crime, if, for example, you take something that already has the shape and look of a gun, and you further modify it to make it appear even more like it's an actual workable firearm, you can't really get upset with the cops for thinking that you have an actual real firearm. It's crazy, I know. And one other thing that I think you probably want to take away from this is courts aren't stupid. They're not going to generally take more esoteric arguments about grammar and syntax and where people try to take statutes and construe them in such a way that it undermines the purpose of the statute. That's generally not going to happen. But more specifically, courts are going to look at these things like they're people. Judges and justices are people, and they think about things like people think about things, and they react to things like people react about things. And you've got to expect a judge to think about things like most people would think about things, and to react to things like most people would react to things. And I get that the auditors are trying to push the boundaries, but doing it in a manner that is misleading isn't going to get you what you want, I don't think. Now, that doesn't mean that sometime in the future, maybe a similar stunt might get Miller some dollary dues, but it is less likely because, again, if you go out of your way to make it appear like you're breaking the law, even if you're not, if you go out of your way to make it appear like you're breaking the law, then it's going to look like you're breaking the law. And if it looks like you're breaking the law, if you give the cops probable cause, that's another distinction that people forget this all the time. Cops don't need you to have committed a crime to stop you. They need to have reasonable suspicion to stop you that you committed a crime, and they need to have probable cause that you committed a crime to arrest you. You could have not committed any crime at all, but the cop still might have probable cause. You could have not committed any crime at all, and the cop could still have reasonable suspicion. Go back to Terry v. Ohio. We keep going back to these fundamental things, and people just don't seem to get it. In Terry v. Ohio, all Terry had done was walk up to a window, look in, walk back, talk to someone else. That person would walk up to the window, look in, walk back, and talk to Terry. And they did this several times. And then they walked up the street and they met up with someone else. No crime had been committed. He wasn't charged with any crime other than carrying the firearm, the unlawful carry of the firearm. But Officer McFadden had reasonable suspicion that crime was afoot. Had crime been committed? No. Because remember, reasonable suspicion can attach if a cop thinks that crime is afoot. Not if a crime has been committed, but crime is afoot. Like, you're on your way to go commit a crime. If the cop has reasonable suspicion, he could stop you. Anyway, I'm going to get off my high horse now, but better luck next time, Diddlin Jack. Better luck next time. One other thing of note is apparently, I'm sure everybody is aware of this, but apparently Carolina and Fort Worth got convicted of obstruction or something like that. That's not fatal to her case, by the way, if she's going to sue for excessive force. Just because the cops had probable cause to make an arrest, obviously, since she got convicted, doesn't mean that the amount of force they used to effectuate that arrest was reasonable. So she may still recover despite having done some jail time. I guess she did some jail time, but then it was too tough, and so then she took the probation or whatever. I have never served time in jail, thank God, knock on wood, but jail doesn't seem fun. I've been to jails, like to visit clients, and it's no fun. I don't knock anybody at all for not wanting to be in jail. I've never been to a woman's jail, but I've been to plenty of men's jails, and it's oppressive, and I think it's definitely a punishment to go to jail. People say, it's like happy camp volleyball land or whatever, and I used to say that too, but having been to a couple jails, it is no fun. Do not like, would not recommend. Anyway, good luck to you, Caroline and Fort Worth, on your suit for excessive force. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.